Today I'm going to be giving an introduction of Plato's theory of forms found in the Republic and throughout most of his middle dialogues. So basically we're going to start out with what are forms themselves. So for forms, I'm going to give a very basic example and then we'll expand upon that. So we have the example of a circle. So we have a circle, very intuitive what that is. Now, there is some sort of perfect circle for Plato, and it does not exist in this world, but all circles try and copy that perfect circle. We can do another example too. A bed is an example he uses. So there's some sort of perfect bed that all craftsmen who make beds try to reach, this perfect bed. And this is always going to be incomplete. This level of perfection in the world is always going to be incomplete because it's never going to reach this sort of perfect being, which is only found in the world beyond this one. Now, Plato refers to this world as the world of becoming, the world of change, because this world is altering, I mean, I'm altering right now. My hands are moving, my mouth is moving, there's wind flowing, all of these are altered states. Now, for Plato, the theory of forms is a world of being. Being is a stagnant concept. It's really impossible to explain because there is no being in this world. So you have to conceptualize it, kind of. But it's a stagnant concept of things that do not change, that are immutable, eternal, etc. So the form of the bed is always imperfect to the real bed, which is always beyond our understanding. Now we can connect some of Plato's political theory here to this, where Plato believes that you have to have a philosopher king or a group of philosopher kings or whatever, because they are the ones that have access to the forms, and the forms are not able for common people to have access to. Now, there are some variations. Again, I mentioned the craftsman earlier has access to the form of the bed, or at least the function of the bed, how a bed should function. And Plato would say that the forms of virtue and stuff and the good are only accessed through the philosopher. So we could say the higher level forms, perhaps. Now, Plato's theory of forms has a couple of various analogies or allegories, you could say. The very famous one is the cave, all right? 3 people are chained up in a cave. There's shadows on the wall. All they see their whole life are those shadows. And they associate their reality with those shadows. What is in front of them is their reality. After someone breaks out, somehow one of the guys breaks out, all right? And he leaves the cave. And what he sees in the outside world is, trees and grass and all this stuff, which was never available to him while he's stuck in the cave. So Plato conceptualizes this world as the cave, and as such, the person that steps out of the cave is the philosopher king or kings, and they have to come back into the cave to deliver the regular people from the illusion of this world, basically. And that's one of the main examples people will give for the theory of forms. Another one is the allegory of the line, basically, where you have the you have kind of structured where there's a hierarchy in a sense of closeness to the truth or closeness to the forms or whatever. So first is your virtues, your good, your justice, etc. Then you have mathematical truths. Plato's time, algebra was not a thing, so we'd be speaking purely geometrical truths, this is a square, that's a triangle, things like that. Next are opinions of the external world, and the last are ignorance or falsities, I'm not a man, I'm a wolf, something like that. Plato would be all right, that's a falsity, that's the farthest removed from the truth, and is hierarchy of closeness to the truth or whatever. Now, Plato in the Republic was not a big fan of art, poetry, and plays, we could say, or how he conceived of art, and visual art too, but he saw them as 2 degrees separated from the forms. And he gives an example of a man who is painting a shoe. So the man who's painting a shoe, Plato says, does not have access to the actual shoe, the form of the shoe, the perfect shoe he's painting. He has access to the already produced shoe and the world, the craftsman made, And so when he's painting the shoe, he's not painting this idealized form of the truth. He's painting this copy, And And so this makes him 2 degrees separated from the truth, which is why in his political philosophy, he does not believe that painters and poets and artists in general should be allowed in his republic, because they are always pushing against the truth. And this does change over time. If you look at his Philebus dialogue, which came after this chronologically, there's much more appraisal for the arts and humanities and such. And he develops his thought over time with his view towards the arts, as he started to realize that he, in a sense, was an artist and that the work he produced was some sort of art, probably. But that's kind of his view in the Republic of Forms. And I want to give some implications, because a lot of later philosophy used the forms, and is also a lot of the understanding of the forms in the modern day is very incorrect, I'll say. People in the modern day see Plato's forms as like, oh, Plato just believed there was like this like secret world that like you couldn't get into and all this. Not really. Again, the philosopher king has access to the secret, to this world beyond this world of forms, these perfect world of being, the stagnant nature of being. And as such, they have to, give the knowledge to the common people. But it wasn't like this, like, oh, this bed is a fake bed. It's like this bed is a copy of the truth of the real bed. Kind of, and of course, in Greek philosophy, you're going to value truth. That's like the highest, It's the highest of all goods, basically, is the truth. So we can go implications for later philosophy as well. I'll speak notably about people that I know the most, mostly Neoplatonism with St. Augustine and Meister Eckhart. And so St. Augustine basically saw that the Trinity, or the Christian God, or whatever you want to say, the forms that Plato spoke about are in the mind of God as such. And so the forms are in a sense co-eternal with God. There is some dispute whether or not he meant that, but we'll go with that for now, that the forms are co-eternal with God for the Neoplatonist Christians. If you look at more like a mystic form of Christianity, like preached by Meister Eckhart, the forms are kind of God himself. It's God as a mediation of the forms, or the forms are a mediation of God, really. And this is really pantheistic in a sense, meaning that there is some sort of God which is mediated through all existence, or all existence is a mediation of God, God's form or whatever. And Augustine rejected this. He said so explicitly that he rejects that like God is in all things, more so that things exist because God has given them the good quality for them to exist. And again, the good is the form of good, which are in the mind of God. And as such, all that God does is expropriating the forms, And Augustine, what I have read of Augustine, didn't go into like the philosopher king and all that like recollection of the forms or whatever that was spoken about in the last video, where we discussed like the recollection found in Meno. And then Augustine talked about that too, where he was reading Plato and he thought he recognized the stuff from some time before this life. But yeah, that's the main theory of forms. A couple of other things I could go over are harmony. We can go over harmony with the forms a little bit. So the forms imply some sort of harmony, that there's some sort of harmonious world of being, as mentioned, but this world is some sort of disharmony, which tries to reclaim that harmony, which was never there. In a sense, we want to use a modern philosophical term. We could say this is a simulacra, being a existence of the past which was never there in the first place, an imagined existence of the past, you could say. So this sort of harmonious world of being never really existed in this physical realm. As such, we try and attribute our physical realm to that world of being and trying to bring down the forms, kind of like in the cave allegory of the philosopher king returning with all the knowledge, bringing the forms down to this world, is sort of what Plato would be speaking about. So yeah, I'm gonna go over a quick summary because that was a lot and I went into a lot. But basically, the main things you should take away from this video is the form is a sort of perfect knowledge, perfect concept of a thing, perfect bed, the perfect circle that only exists not in this world and exists through some sort of mediation with the mind of a philosopher king for Plato, or just for Augustine and the Neoplatonists, just some sort of mind which only like really intelligent or educated people, which for Augustine meant they had to be Christian. So, and yeah, okay, I think that's fine with that. I'm going to conclude the video, and I will say the Republic is a great dialogue. I didn't even get into a concept of justice, which I have a whole diagram that I've drawn out of what I believe that Plato is trying to attribute with justice. And then I've kind of expanded upon it like a more modern philosophical and sociological understanding of justice. But yeah, so that's going to be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe down below for more videos on philosophy, which you probably won't learn anywhere else. So